Welcome to Voices of OKC. Thank you guys so much for joining us again this week for our weekly podcast. We highlight voices in Oklahoma City who are doing incredible things. And guys, today is nothing short of that. The person I get to interview the first half of this podcast is someone that is just incredibly special to me. I've had the privilege of knowing him for almost 9 years. He's currently a student. He attends City Center. He's so busy right now with work and everything else and ministry school that he can't come by as often, but he's here whenever he can be. And today we get to talk to Jordan Arnett. But first, the interviewer, me, is going to be the interviewee, and Jordan is going to host the show today. So now we're going to hand it over to Jordan.
Well, hi, welcome to the Voices of OKC podcast. This is where we highlight just awesome people doing amazing OKC community. I'm your host, Jordan Arnett, and the person I'm interviewing today, you know him, you love him. Obviously, he's the host of this podcast. It's the very own Jed Chappell. How are you doing today?
Good, Jordan. Thanks so much, man.
Of course.
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me on my podcast.
I know, right? But honestly, like as you said, 9 years.
Yeah.
It's been so long, and you've been such a mentor, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jordan.
And
I appreciate you saying that.
It's been really awesome, just a journey that we've had, especially when I'm gone because of so many things. But you've been such a great mentor. But yeah, let's dive in. We're doing a lot of background work.
Okay.
A lot of background, but just want to pick your brain on some things. So I'll just jump straight into it. So my first thought was obviously is why City Center?
Yeah,
like,
that's a good
why so much in the youth and like the just OKC in general, really. Like what was the thought process behind that?
That's a really good question and thoughtful question, Jordan. You know, I think for me, I grew up in Oklahoma City. I was born in St. Louis, but moved here when I was a year old. So this is all I know. So for me, I've always felt like Oklahoma City was just my city, very close to my heart. I grew up doing a lot of things that were not good in this city. And I've been privileged to do some things that were good in this city as well. And so I've just always been an Oklahoma City guy, and I went through a lot of things as a young person. So the why behind City Center really has a lot to do with that. And I'll make it really brief, but 11 years old, my father passed. Had a lot of, saw a lot of violence growing up and stuff like that. Saw a lot of drugs and alcohol use and different things like that. And father passed away. He kind of like that safety blanket was removed a little bit. And so moving forward at 14, I started selling drugs for one of my older brothers, got into a lot of trouble. Ended up getting myself into a situation in the middle of an armed robbery where I drew my weapon on a police officer. And before I could squeeze the trigger, he shot me 4 times. I lost like 65% of my blood and flatlined in the ambulance for 20 seconds and woke up handcuffed to a bed at Baptist Medical Center. And, I was like, maybe I should change a few things, and so go figure on that. And so that was the beginning of a process just personally for me of really discovering, that God was good, and that he cared about me and that he was real. Because I grew up in church, but it wasn't really a relationship that I had with God. So anyway, that whole situation happened. I was sentenced to 47 years in prison. Miraculously, I only did 8 years in prison. But that day I was sentenced, I'll never forget. I was just completely broken, fell on my face, asked God to forgive me of my sin, repented. And to Jordan, I just can't tell you, I can't explain the feeling I had. I'm sure you might know this, but there was a relational interaction that happened.
Yeah.
There was this thing where I was like, oh man, this is, God is real. He actually wants to communicate with me, And that moment was very comforting. And I wish I could say it like an angel lifted me out of my jail cell and said, okay, now you're all better. You don't have to do time. But I ended up doing time, only 8 years because of good behavior. And got out of prison in 2003. And I knew that God had a plan for my life. Wasn't sure what it was. And then suddenly somebody at the church that I was attending said, hey, I think you'd be a great pastor. And I was like, is that legal?
Is that allowed?
Am I allowed? Is the Bible okay with that? And so I became a pastor, went through the process, and the ministry I've always loved being a part of is ministry inside communities that are under-resourced or are hurting or vulnerable, whatever. The Lord talks a lot about communities like that and how important it is to his heart to serve in those areas. And so we moved away to Minnesota for about 1.5 years, and then I was just homesick. And I asked a friend, I was like, hey, do you know of any nonprofits that would be looking to hire a guy like me, And he said, well, how about I give you a building to use? And how about I help you raise the money to renovate it? And how about And before he could get the last words out, I'm like, I'm
Yes.
sold. And so we were on the road back to Oklahoma City. And, so the whole process began to really unfold. And the why is because of what I've experienced. I always think, what would have it looked like if I would have had a safe place, a safe, dignifying place to go to where I could access resources and relationships that would help me in my life, And so I wanted to provide a space like that for families and young people to come to. And so we went all over the community here in War Acres area, asking leaders and officials what the needs were. We identified those 3 categories, and we just took off running. And so with youth, I just believe, man, that there is so much in our future. I believe that, young people are our greatest asset. But for some reason in our society today, they're devalued and overlooked.
Yeah.
And so I just want to place value on young people and open up doors that might not be open for them, So anyway, that's kind of a long explanation, but that's the why, man. I'm really passionate about it. I'm almost 50 and I cry now a lot because of it. so don't judge me. But man, I just can't help it. I just want to see people gain access to something that they didn't think was attainable for their life. So hope that answers your question.
That does. And first off, praise Jesus.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
That's so inspiring, especially to like the listeners at home.
Yeah.
I think that's literally living proof of things can turn around, and there is a good and there's a light, and that light is Jesus. That is awesome.
Yeah.
I want to dive a little deeper into something you said, which was the night of your arrest.
Okay.
1995.
Yep.
I did my homework,
Man.
guys. Did my homework. 1995. What was the day like, just leading up to that moment, if you can recall? Just what was that like?
That's really a good question, because it's a day that's affected my mood when that day, say today, that day feels like that day as far as the weather goes. It always triggers. I always used to wonder, why do I feel odd and awkward on sunny, beautiful days?
Yeah.
And it's because it was that day was a beautiful, sunny day. I was at home living on the South Side with my brother at the time, selling drugs in Oklahoma City. I was 18. And, in the drug world, there's a time of year they call the drought season. And so for whatever reason, there's like a drop in supply of drugs and stuff. So what that means for a young 18-year-old drug dealer who likes to spend money quickly is I was out of money and I was trying to figure out how to, make some more. So some friends came over. They knew I carried a gun, and they came to the house at like 10 in the morning. They said, "Hey, Jed, I know that, hey, it's that dry time of year. And so we want to go kick in some doors to people's homes. And if anybody's there, we'll tie them up and take everything they got." And at this time in my life, I was a very angry, just young person. And I was up for it. So that's how the day started off. And we just went from house to house. And it's funny, at that last house that we got confronted at, I knew something was about to go wrong, And I think all of us have had that feeling,
Yeah.
Some of us are wise and listen to it. I was not, and I didn't. And so it's funny. I believe that was God telling me, this is going to go south, but I still got a plan for you if you choose it. That's what's really cool about God, And so, so that day was just a really beautiful day, and it felt like just any other day, but it absolutely, completely changed my life, for the good. I always say my worst day was my best day, actually, because God came into the situation and, had his say. So
he met you right there.
He really did.
Literally. And I think that's wise about what you said, how he gave you that feeling, and it's wise to listen, but sometimes you don't, and that's just because you're human. It's our innate nature sometimes, yet God still makes a way at the end. I think that's what's so beautiful about it. Yeah. And that's truly awesome.
That's so good.
And then you came to God in prison the day of your sentencing. Yep. Next question for you. Did more research. 1997.
Okay.
It's about, I think, 1 year almost a full year, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. What was your thought process like? Because it's like you're technically sentenced to 47 years, and it's been a year in. Jesus, but like, what's like, is the flesh fighting you? Is there despair, hope? What was your thought?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked. That's a great question, really great question. Because what does the lifespan of a prison sentence look like?
Yeah.
That first year you're in denial. You think, there's these mile markers. So that you have a 120-day review. 120 days into your sentence where they say, hey, we'll just review everything, see if something wasn't right, we'll adjust the sentence. Well, that came and went. Didn't work for me.
Nothing changed.
Yeah, nothing. And, then the year came, and there's always talk in prison about there's a new bill passing. They're going to let out 500 people, and all this stuff. And those days came and went, too. And so at that year mark, I was like, wow, where am I at?
Yeah.
What if I have to do all 47 years? Am I still going to serve God? Am I still going to have a good attitude? Am I still going to stay out of fights and all this other stuff that you can get into very easily in prison? And they have drugs there. They even have alcohol in prison. They make their own sometimes, so everything that you could get into there is there,
Yeah.
And so that first year in, it was like it was a crossroads for me. And I had to realize, you know what, no matter what, I'm serving God. My life is different now. I have a son, because I didn't mention this, but my girlfriend at the time, not my wife today, but my girlfriend at the time, we had a son together. She was pregnant the day I got sentenced, and she went into labor in the courtroom. And so my first son was born that day.
Yeah.
So there's all these things that are floating around. It's like, look, Jed, there is a lot ahead of you, but you have to take it. You have to take hold of it. You have to embrace what I have for you, And so that's what that first year was like. And honestly, that was probably the best moment that I could have had in prison, because it was that honest self-awareness of where I'm at, and realizing too, like, I'm not ready to be back out on the streets. My frontal lobe is still forming, and I'm making these kinds of decisions. So I probably need to mature, And so God knew exactly what He's doing. So anyway, that first year was interesting and very challenging. Then the second year was hard, man, because it's like, okay, that dream of getting out early is over.
Yeah. You're in it for the long run now.
Yeah. But by God's grace, I still got out early after doing 8 years. But, that's more than half. I think that's half your life. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know.
Just about.
Can you imagine that? It's like, it's just a lot. It's still a lot of time. It doesn't seem like much to me in hindsight, but it's still a lot. So yeah, but I will say this is going to sound crazy. I wouldn't do it all over again unless God just said, you need to do this all over again. But it was the most enriching, beautiful experience being in prison, honestly, because I had to really rely on something outside of myself, which is obviously God. But many times we are so focused on controlling situations that we just nudge God right out, So anyway, that was what that first year was like. And, from there, I began to see a lot of growth in my life. So
yeah,
and it's a great question.
It's really hard to keep God in that picture and be like, okay, you take it over. Whether it's like literally anything, like whether it's a situation you're in or like financial, literally whatever it is, it's so hard to just be like, I'm going to sit back and you can handle it. I think that's just because that just innate drive, especially I think it's even harder in men because we want to be leaders, whether it's relationships, families, we want to be shown as a strong. So I think it's that's really awesome and powerful how you were able, even in the chaos, you were able to step back as well. I think that's truly wonderful.
Appreciate that, Jordan. Yeah,
that's
awesome.
truly awesome.
Yeah, man.
My another thought was this right here. 2016, City Center.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Man, you're good. You got all the dates, man. You got all the
I've a lot of homework. 2016.
And guys, I didn't even ask him to do any research. This is my guy.
I appreciate it. 2016 City Center opens. Obviously, I was there day one. Nice turnout, a lot of kids.
A lot of kids. It was wild back then.
A lot of. It was an insane amount.
It was a wild west.
Fun, unorganized chaos.
That's right.
You had a lot of good moments, and then there were some bad moments as well.
Sure.
What was one of the earliest learning curves, I think, when you're starting a nonprofit like this that deals with so many situations in the city?
Yeah. So, one of the first things, we said was, we need young people here that need this space, And so there's a lot of times that, it's so funny to me sometimes, but when a young person becomes challenging, we begin to find out ways to, we're going to have to ask them to not come or this or that. And my philosophy is the kids that are having the most challenges need to be here the most, So we learned that was a real thing. The exception was guys like you are just golden all the time, You're the great guy that you've always been a model and example at City Center. But, but to really do this work, you have to be willing to get messy and dirty, And so the learning curve for us was, okay, because it feels unmanageable, that doesn't mean we say, okay, we can't start letting these kids come that are, quote unquote, whatever, bad actors or whatever. We have to figure out how to manage that. So the learning curve came because we were having so many kids come. How do we manage it? How do we create stations or something to where we can rotate out? How do we do this? So we did a lot of different things. But I think the key that we saw was, we were willing to do whatever it took to adjust, to make sure those that needed to be here could be here and could be here safely in a dignifying way that empowered them. So that was a big one, because I think the hardest thing to do is just get started with something. And so I always encourage people, just get started. I don't care.
Take that leap.
If it's the gym that you're having a hard time, working out, don't work out. Just go to the gym, go back home. You went to the gym. Next day, do some rep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so sometimes we get really eager to get, 8 years down the road in the first year, but we really have to embrace the process and listen to those things that are trying to teach you something in those moments and trust the Lord on the direction you're supposed to go. So that was a big one for us. And there's always the situations where you have to learn to communicate well with parents.
Yeah.
Because not all the parents get very way involved, but there are a lot of parents that are really involved. And if you don't really communicate well to them and something happens, then they're like, what's going on? So we've had to learn to curb some of those challenges with good communication as well. So it's a good question, man. Great question.
Thank you. Well, I, for one, could say this was a very safe place and to emerge and develop, personally speaking, for myself.
Man. Cool. Yeah. I love to hear that. That's awesome. Not prompted, guys. Not prompted.
And then I think my last question would be 30 years ago.
Yeah.
1995, obviously. A very turning curve, a big turning curve.
Yeah.
30 years ago, if he saw you today, where you are right now doing what you're doing, what do you think he would say, or what would you say to him?
Yeah, at first he might make fun of me. You're like, man, you're doing this. What's wrong with you? There's money to be made out there. He might.
We can score right now. Come on.
He might be really confused. But I would say to him, man, there's something ahead of you that's way better than what you're experiencing right now. Yeah. And if there's anything I say in this moment that can encourage you to change some decisions you're making, then that's great. But if not, I just want to encourage you. When it gets hardest, God is going to be there with you.
So good. That is so good. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Hamilton.
man.
And
I appreciate it.
Yeah, we are going to go into a time where we are going to switch, and Jed's going to interview me. So, yeah.
Perfect, man. You did it. All right, we are back. Voices of OKC, and this interview is already incredible, not because of anything I've said, but because of our interviewer. So the roles have switched, and now the host is back in the host seat, and I get to interview Jordan. Jordan, man, great interview earlier. Thank you so much. You got me emotional just thinking about, just the path that, I've been so privileged to take, all of it, the good and the bad. God works all those things together for good, and so it's just really cool to hear you so articulately walk me through those questions. So I really appreciate that. Great interview. So now it's your turn, man.
Ooh, I'm in the hot seat.
So how old are you now?
16.
16. Do you have any idea what I was doing at 16? You probably don't. You don't want to know. I don't think you should know. But the difference between, where you're at 16 and where I'm at is incredible. And I really give you the credit for that because you've made those choices. We city centers here, whatever. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You're the one that made those choices. You're the one that said, I'm not going to settle, And so do you think that having some place, it doesn't have to be city center, but do you think having some place safe to come to that you have people that treat you with respect and things like that, you think that is important for young people today?
100%. Obviously, you know this, but for those listening, I don't. A little insight is I grew up stable. Home life was rough, to say the least. Parents would verbally fight a lot, and dad would leave often at times just to go do whatever, get out the house. And we were always in and out of places, whether it be apartments, motels. So I think whether city center was a big help on top of that, and just having that community where I feel loved and respected. And it doesn't always have to be city center. It could be a close friend's house, a church, literally whatever it could be. helped me shape who I am today.
That's really good, man. So this is the Voices of OKC podcast. We tell stories of hope, and you have a tremendously hopeful story, man. What you've experienced and been through, and you did a really good job of making that as palatable as possible, like sharing some of your background. Because I remember, you had some really tough times, growing up, man. And that's what just blows me away sometimes. The resilience that I've seen in you has been pretty phenomenal. And so another question that I have for you is, what was the moment of hopelessness that you felt that you can remember that led to a moment of hope that transitions you into a space where you felt like, you know what, I'm making this choice to move forward in my life, to make better decisions, not that you were making bad decisions, but to make decisions that can actually impact my future in a positive way. Was there a moment of hopelessness that you felt, and what was the moment of hope that transitioned into?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. Someone also did their homework. It's not like he's known me for 9 years. My answer to that would be, actually, it started in the 8th grade. So I had already stopped living with my biological parents for majority of the time. I'd see them every couple of days and maybe for like a couple weekends. But things were going good. But for me, what had happened was 8th grade was just a really weird year. I had
Middle school's tough anyway.
Yeah. I would really say I had fallen off the horse spiritually. Like in church, I was always that kid. Like if there is a question the pastor is asking, I got the answer. I got the answer.
I believe that.
But 8th grade was weird. I had fallen off spiritually, and my relationship wasn't there with God, which was weird. And then I had gotten to some really bad relationships, done things I wasn't proud of, and just like really just disrespectful. And so there was a moment where I'm just sitting there and I'm kind of just like, this sucks.
Yeah. This does not feel good.
Yeah.
I know this is not how I'm supposed to be living.
Yeah. There's no like direction anywhere. And the moment where I felt hope it was a Sunday, in particular, and I was at church. And normally here's how my 8th grade went at church. I'd be in the very back, 2 headphones in, or sleeping, one of the two. But this Sunday was really different. We were doing baptisms that Sunday. And so I was sitting there and I've been pondering it all service. And at the end, when baptisms are already over, I'm like, I think I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to do it.
Awesome.
So I found my youth pastor. I was like, hey, I know we just watched all the baptisms happen, but can I do it? And he was like, of course. Yeah. So August 20th, 2023, in my opinion, the most important day of my life.
That's very cool,
I got baptized, and here I am now. There has been highs, there's been lows, but God's grace is abounding.
That's
for sure.
Really good, man. So I like what you said. There's been highs, there's been lows. So what's that like for you? It's easy to say, hey, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. But what do you do? Like practically speaking, not just, hey, I trust God. No, what do you do when there's really low, hopeless moments? What's the practical step that you can give anybody watching today to like generate hope, when you feel hopeless?
Yeah, I'd say for those watching, when you have lows, you're human. That's who you are. There's going to be those times where you're lows, where it's a family situation, relationship situation. That's who you are.
Yeah.
What has helped me so much is, especially from a spiritual standpoint, it's just remembering what my rock is on, right? So for those who build their houses on sand, those will tumble and fall. But those who build their houses on rock, my rock will sustain. And that was just from the word. And that's been like part of my motto is I build from that. And I remember that's where it is. So there's light. Another thing is just like I dive into my word so much. And back to the community thing. It's like I surround myself with people who can be like, hey, we're here for you.
Yeah, and you're off, Jordan. What's going on? You have to have people that will check on you too. Yeah.
And just having that community and then diving into word was really like in those types of hopelessness and despair. I had people to lean on. I had someone I could call, even though I'm a 13-year-old with actively like just so much going on. I can call anytime and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Yeah. You're like, okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's my advice is just find that community.
Yeah.
Find that community that will constantly support you and uplift you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where it is, but when you have a community that supports you and is like-minded like you, it can build you up in so many ways.
Yeah. I think the biggest threat to our mental health, spiritual health, whatever the case may be, is isolation,
Definitely.
Because when we get isolated, all kinds of thoughts can run through our head, and we're not bouncing them off anybody but ourselves as to whether they're rational or not. And before you know it, we go down a rabbit hole that leads us somewhere we never wanted to go. So having that community is super vital, in that regard. And, that's why, for me, I have a very solid group of people that I know I can go to and trust, and I know that they have my best interest in mind, and so that can be hard to find. And I think a lot of people will settle for friends because they just want friends.
Yeah.
It sounds like you didn't settle for friends. It sounds like God gave you friends, and you embraced those friends because you saw what it was. It was a community for you. That's really cool. Obviously, I can, all the listeners can tell, and I know this, but spiritually speaking, your faith, your walk with Jesus, and has been so critical for you. So much so that you are now in ministry school. Is that right?
Soon to be.
Soon
We're
to be.
almost there.
Okay.
I've been doing summer internship at my church.
Okay.
So that was every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I'm still at the church very frequently. I'm learning all sorts of different things. And then the moment I graduate, ministry school, the ministry college is the goal. But I've been learning a bunch, and the internship's been really helpful.
That's very cool, man. So you're going to go to, what school are you going to go to?
It is SEU's extension site in Oklahoma called PCLC.
Okay. Very cool, man. That's exciting. And you're not really sure what area of ministry you want to do yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, you'll figure it out. And, even if you'll have an enriching experience, doing that, having that. Because I love how the church you're at, they do a great job of the hands-on stuff. There's so much stuff that you just don't learn in, theology school, at all. You have to be face-to-face with people in ministry to really understand what they're going through. So that's really powerful, man. So do you think you're going to be an Oklahoma City guy the rest of your life?
I think so. So a part of me really wants to travel.
Yeah.
A part of me really wants to
Yeah,
go
good.
explore new places, but also it's weird because a part of me also really doesn't want to leave home when I know there's so much work that can be done here.
Right.
Like granted, work can be done everywhere. Obviously, the world needs people, hands and feet everywhere. But it's like when I can see why leave somewhere else when I can see I can make an impact right now.
Yeah.
So my current thought is unless God calls me somewhere else, I'm here.
There you go. So we're going to wrap things up today. So I really would love for you to share an encouraging word to our audience, just something that you feel like has helped you maybe. And you can go as long or as short as you want, but I just would love for you to address the audience and just share something encouraging that's helped you.
Well, to the audience listening and watching today, my favorite verse, and we were talking about this earlier, is 1 Thessalonians 5:16, and that is always be joyful. So the guy writing this is Paul. Paul was previously known as Saul, who actually was a terrible person. He actually persecuted and killed Christians for a living till he met Jesus on the road to Damascus, was blinded for 3 days, and then got healed and became the apostle Paul, who actually wrote over half the New Testament. It's insane, his story. But the reason that's my favorite verse is because when you look at the context of it, so Paul has gone through so much. He has been stoned, shipwrecked, bitten by a poisonous snake, and actually is thrown in jail and then kicked out of the town, and actually writing the letter to that town. And the reason I find that verse so powerful, it's because God's not telling you to never be sad or never cry. Those emotions are so valid because you're human. God gave you those emotions for a reason. He wants you to express them. I think the verse is so important because God's saying be joyful because he's always there with you. He's never far from you. He's never more than a step away, actually. So I think that verse is just so important because he's always there. And happiness does not equal joy. Those are two different things. Happiness is temporary, and it's something we always try to reach for. But when we reach for the Lord, he gives us an eternal joy that can never be taken away. So just know, keep pursuing, keep pushing, because God will make a way. He already has, because death has already been defeated, and he'll continue to do it again.
That's so good, man. Thank you so much for that encouragement. And, man, proud of you, man. So proud of the man you're becoming and are. And I feel like I'm talking to a 30-year-old, and you're 16, man. And, it's just a very important lesson for all of us to absorb of, we have a choice. We have a choice. We've all been dealt different situations in life, but we have a choice out of that, I want people to know that, we have a choice. We don't have to default to the negative patterns that we've seen our whole lives. We can actually choose something different. You've done that, man. And again, we can't take credit for that. That was your choice. But we are so privileged and so honored that you chose that here. Just really proud of you, man. And sorry to the audience. I get a little emotional when I talk to these guys because it's mean a lot to me, but super excited about where your future's headed. And I can't wait, man, to get to see when you're just serving God in the capacity that you feel like he's called you to serve in, And I'm excited to see the future. And so thank you, Jordan, for doing this today. Excellent host. You're going to take my job in a couple days, I think. But you're going to be on in February. We have a very special guest we're going to go remote to here in the city. I'll hold that for now. We'll share more on that update later. But you're going to be the host of the show. We'll be there together, but you'll be hosting it. Yeah. And you're going to be awesome. And so I'm really proud of that. But anyway, man, thanks so much.
Of course.
You have to come back on.
I definitely will.
We have to get a graduation update at least. Yeah. It's got to be before that. But so honored to have you, man. Have a great one. And man, guys, I hope you have an incredible day. And I hope you really take in the messages that Jordan shared today, and even consider, the things that he's overcome and he's pressed forward towards, and just that resilience. That's a big part of life. Like when we can be resilient, even in the hard times, it's amazing what can happen and what good doors can open. So thanks again, Jordan. We'll see you guys next week.